Okay, so before we get started, I'm just going to run over my strategy and positions and interests, things like that. So overall, I think as counsel for Lawyer A, my strategy is just to push the fact to Lawyer B and her counsel that I think that Lawyer A or Lawyer B's position with XYZ Industries really meshes well with Lawyer A's interest to build a full service client representation business. Lawyer B has very good litigation experience, especially with XYZ, and XYZ has given all of its business specifically to Lawyer B. So, and the way I understand it, Lawyer A has a good relationship with XYZ Industries also. So I think that their interests are relatively similar and they would mutually benefit from joining into a partnership. And I think that in discussions with Lawyer B, we've talked about the fact that if XYZ Industries comes with Lawyer B into the partnership with A, that would likely cover all first year capital expenditures and any additional annual expenses of the partnership, just due to the amount of work that XYZ has for Lawyer B to do. From a broader perspective, I would say that we don't want to be, our strategy is not to be overly aggressive in this negotiation, because if we do reach an agreement, the parties are going to be working together for the foreseeable future, so we don't want any bad blood before we actually get started working together. Specifically for a position for Lawyer B, he wants a minimum compensation guarantee of $85,000 along with any excess of his profit share over that $85,000, depending on what the profit share is going to be. The underlying interest, which is similar again to Lawyer A, is to build a full service litigation department. Lawyer B specifically wants to focus on technology related startup companies, things of that nature. From our understanding, Lawyer A's position is that she would like Lawyer B to accept the position as an associate, or if they do enter into a partnership, to restrict Lawyer B's profit sharing as a partner. Lawyer A's underlying interest would be to develop a firm that would be able to offer full service representation to corporate clients. And Lawyer B's BATNA, if we are not able to come to a negotiated agreement, would be most likely to accept the associate role with Lawyer A. This way there would still hopefully be a path towards partnership. And if Lawyer B were to take the associate position, he would still have time to work on the alternative dispute resolution guide, which he had been approached about, which would be a supplement to his income. The worst alternative to negotiated agreement would be for Lawyer B to fail in gaining partnership, be pushed out at the firm he's at now, not make partner there, and something happens during the negotiation that ruins the relationship and he's not even offered or is not able to negotiate an associate position. Lawyer A's BATNA would be to get Lawyer B to agree to be an associate. And the worst alternative for Lawyer A would likely be for this partnership negotiation to fall through. Lawyer B also won't be an associate. This would deprive Lawyer A of the opportunity to provide full service representation to the clients. And I think that's it for that part.
I might redo mine.
Okay. Go for it.
Thanks. So, Lawyer A is in a unique position because she has over 10 years of experience focusing on corporate law and more non-litigation. But she's also tired from working long 60 and 70-hour weeks and really wants to focus her energy more on gaining new clients and less on doing the lawyering, if you will. So in terms of her position with B, she's already offered $75,000 a year. At this point, B does not seem to be interested, but that would still be ideal for A. And so A is open to partnership as long as she can maintain her financial stability, and she has several options that she thinks will allow her to do that. And so if B is reasonable, then she's amenable to partnership. If B is not reasonable and has some demands that A feels like are going to jeopardize her financial position and the position of her business, then she's going to seek a litigator elsewhere because there's a good market and she can find someone else with that skill to litigate. Also, A was actually offered a position for compensation, but her position is that she really wants to be more independent. She enjoys not having to answer to someone and getting to sort of control her own workflow. She wants to allocate profits based on a fixed percentage, and would like B to provide at least $3,000 of capital. But the allocations outside of that are negotiable, especially after the first year. So if B is able to bring in more billable hours or provide more capital, then A is definitely amenable to changing the percentage of allocation as far as the profits go. So yeah, again, the $75,000 offer would be ideal, and it would cost A more, but it would also be easier because A wouldn't have to consider the partnership, the ramifications of what happens if the partnership dissolves, and so in terms of A's interest specifically, A again has other job offers that are pretty high paying, but because she values her independence and enjoys private practice, she wouldn't really want to do that, although it's an option. And A has already invested a substantial amount of time and energy into B, so it would really be great if A and B can make this work and there could be a win-win. The other thing is that XYZ has been a major client for A, and at this point they're wanting to bring in their own in-house counsel to save them money. And so if A is not able to provide them with a litigator, she's going to lose $75,000 of annual income, which is pretty significant. And so if B could come in and be that litigator, again, it would benefit both A and B. The other sort of interest for A is that partnership is risky, right? Because it's expensive. Dissolution and wind up are expensive and costly. They're time consuming, and partnerships are just not guaranteed. There's no guarantee how things are going to work. A has put a lot of time into building up her reputation, her practice, and it's risky to risk it with someone. And then also A, has some savings, but she would be taking a substantial reduction in her income to move forward in partnership. So in terms of B's positions, there are many that are not yet known. And we're hoping to find more about B's positions during this negotiation. But what we do know is that B is extremely interested in partnership. He was not very thrilled about the $75,000 offer that A provided him to be an associate litigator. So B's interest really seems to be partnership. We also know that B is not the most social guy, and so he probably won't bring a ton of business, even in terms of litigation, to the partnership. So that is a consideration. His gifts and assets seem to be actually doing the work of litigation, and then helping potentially with administration and technology. But again, he has been a litigator for 8 years. He's got experience. He already is, in his current position, has about 1,900 billable hours, and has held that consistently for the past 8 years. So B is definitely an asset, and we think he would do well in an upper level litigation position. We also know that B is up for partnership in his current job, and it is uncertain as to whether or not he will be made partner. And if he's not, the way that his firm works, he would basically leave and look for work elsewhere within the year of that decision. So, it could work out where he doesn't make partner and is looking for something, and we can offer it. So, we hope to find more about B's interest. And, I think at the end of the day, A, again, has invested in B and really thinks highly of him, and they've worked together for just as sort of colleagues in different companies for a while. And so we hope to maintain that relationship, even if that means we have to find a litigator elsewhere. So we have several options, specifically around the allocations and the capital contributions pertaining to the partnership. And so, we think that there's room here to brainstorm and to get creative with B about what this could look like moving forward. Our best possible outcome is that B has a change of heart and decides to work as an associate for A in that $75,000 range, and then that they consider partnership again in the future. If B's not willing to do that, the best possible outcome with partnership would be that B agrees to options 1 and A under our allocations and capital contributions, meaning that A would receive 75% of the annual profits, and that B would receive 25%. And then in terms of capital allocations, that B would provide $5,000 to $10,000 of the initial money for the partnership. Our worst possible outcome is that things don't work out with A and B, and that as a result their relationship and potential to work in the future is no longer an option. So we don't even necessarily see this negotiation not working at this time as the worst possible outcome, because we think at the right time A and B can work really well together. So we are eager to see how this goes.
All right, ready to get started?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so I guess.
So do you want to try to be? Do you want to be them, or do you want to?
We can just be their counsel if that's what you want to do.
In some ways, it's less complicated to just be them.
Yeah, I was getting tripped up when I was doing my thing for a minute.
Right. So.
It's up to you.
Don't say that. I'm like not. I want to consider you too. Do you want to? want to try it as them. I
Yeah.
think I'll get tripped up probably that way.
I can be counsel because I just did the
Okay.
thing as that, so let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start negotiating.
Sounds good.
I think,
Good to see you again.
yeah, good to see you. Hopefully we can make this as painless as possible today.
Yeah. I'm glad we've had time to kind of talk
Mm-hmm.
over the past few months, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that we can come to a nice agreement for both of our clients. So I think it's important to say from the outset, I'm pretty certain that we both have the same interests in mind for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Both clients, they want to grow their respective practice areas.
Mm-hmm.
And our perspective is that if we join together in a partnership, then both sides' interests will be met in doing that. We will be able to grow.
Mm-hmm.
A will be able to grow their transactional and corporate work.
Mm-hmm.
B will be able to increase his litigation
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
They both have mutual clients.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we're on a good footing to get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Is there anything else that might be helpful to share about sort of where these positions are as we move forward?
Well, if we're just going to get down to it, he wants to be a partner.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if there could be a deal structured, he would consider accepting an associate position if that led towards partnership over time, but he really would like to join as a partner at the outset, and that, I think for B, he understands that that would likely not be a 50-50 partnership at the beginning, but still a partner.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Can I ask why B is so interested in partnership, and even just particularly at this time? I know he's been at his firm for 8 years, so.
Well, I think that is part of the reason is just the time that he spent as an associate. He has the experience, and he feels that he's deserving of a partnership, and that he would like to also have control over his area of practice, litigation, and as a partner he's more able to do that. And so I think with that being said, we should address the concern that I know that A has, is that B is not a people person. I think B would disagree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He doesn't feel at home with like your corporate banker or your Wall Street investment guy. That's true. But he majored in internet science in undergrad. He's worked with technology companies, and he feels that he is able to communicate and develop a reputation with technologically slanted corporations. So with those people, he thinks he's a people person for sure. And on top of that, B feels like technology companies are kind of the future of corporate law as it stands. So he's not too concerned with the idea that he's not a people person.
Yeah, I appreciate you addressing that concern. I would love to just kind of have some time to brainstorm about what a partnership or the associate offer could look like, in which both of our clients' positions and interests will be met. I do want to say that for my client, ideally, we would start out with the associate position. And for some of the same reasons that, you mentioned B's interest. Like, my client has been practicing law now for a number of years, over 15 years. And she has a great reputation and has really great clients. But the reality is she's losing some opportunity not having a litigator. as you know, her and B have worked in similar circles for years, and you know, you might say that A has even been somewhat of a mentor to B, and so B is someone that she really trusts, and long term would definitely, you know, want to consider partnership. However, they've never worked together like this before, and so stepping right into a partnership, not even knowing how they're gonna work together at this level is a bit risky to us, to my client, and so that is where we are. You know, partnerships can get messy, they can get costly. Just even if all went well, the initial process would be costly.
Right.
And so it makes sense to my client to definitely move towards partnership, you know, and consider that after some time as would be in a associate position. So I would love to sort of start with thinking about what that path might look like, because again, we see the value in B, and know that he's wanting a partnership. Understandably, he has been doing this for 8 years, but we want to. My client wants to work with him,
Right.
you know, for at least a year and just sort of see how they work together, what the office is like, and then would be very, very open to partnership.
Is part of the concern with partnership just profit sharing because A is not sure the work output of B?
You know, we've done some calculations. We know that B is consistently put out about 1,900 hours, billable hours, which is great, right? That puts him at partnership even in his own firm. So our concern is not so much what he can do, but it is that, you know, in this first year especially, if he's going to be helping with technology and administration, I don't know how much actual time he's going to put into partnership. We're based on our numbers that we've looked at, we're expecting that you know, approximately 900 hours total would actually go towards billable hours for him for this next year, based on the clients that we already have lined up. And so that's, you know, that's almost less than half of what he's typically done, which is understandable, again, for the first year. And so I think long term, like, we know that B is a great investment, that he will, we think he will bring revenue in, and is a very efficient, productive attorney. So the concern is really more the legality concerning the partnership, specifically like the you know, the capital investment, the allocation for profit share, and then what is going to happen if this doesn't work out and the partnership has to dissolve. So those are our big concerns, and which is why, you know, we think focusing more on sort of crafting this associate position with a very strategic path towards partnership would be more ideal, because that would give us more time to see you know, what B's actual billable hours would be, and what his networking skills are like if he is able to bring in new clients and revenue, and even help with the initial capital investment of the partnership.
What if we were able to go through all of the things that generally are attendant to being in a partnership and come to favorable agreements for A? So if we were able to have a very favorable profit sharing agreement in favor of A, a guaranteed compensation is something that B wants, but I think if he was able to come straight into a partnership, that he would consider taking less than he actually wanted. And then a big concern, it sounds like, for A is what happens if the partnership doesn't work. So if we were able to come to an agreement, if by some objective measure the partnership was not working, then A would be able to withdraw from the partnership with no ramifications and essentially go back to where she was at. And that could be, even that evaluation could be made after a year or so. So if we were able to come to favorable agreements for A on all of those things, would A be willing to look at partnership out of the gate?
I think so.
Okay.
Again, A is going to lose money by starting as a partnership, as opposed to B starting as an associate. But she does see the investment and the potential that B has. So let's do what you suggested and maybe go through some of these finer points and see what profit share might look like, the guarantee of pay and salary, and then what would happen if the partnership had to dissolve.
Okay. I think it's worth mentioning before we do that. B is pretty sure that XYZ Industries will make the transfer over, and that's a huge client I know for A in transactional and corporate matters now. So at B's old firm, or the firm he's with now, XYZ Industries has given all of their litigation matters to him exclusively. So if he were to come over and partner up, then we would have all of XYZ's business across the board. And looking at some of those numbers, I think that would be about, so annual billings in XYZ's litigation matters have been about $150,000. So, and we anticipate that's only going to keep going up as they expand as a company. And that initial $150,000 would easily cover any capital expenditures and annual expenses of the partnership. So we're almost certain that they would make the transfer over because they're such big fans of B. So I think that in itself would alleviate a lot of concerns, but I think we should still obviously go through these smaller details.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been under the impression that XYZ is also considering hiring their own in-house counsel, which means we wouldn't necessarily get that expected revenue that you just talked about. But in looking at some numbers, I do think that within this first year, we could still bring in upwards of $150K just in litigation. So, I mean, I agree with you. B's position will pay off. And there is lots of opportunity for litigation. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Let's look at the numbers and see where we are.
Okay, so I think, let's see, I think the most logical place to start is just profit loss sharing between A and B. So like I said, I think B is willing to be on very unequal footing with A to start out. He understands that is basically the only way that this is going to happen, and that's kind of fair because A has more experience and all of those things. So for profit loss sharing, what if we looked at something like 75% to A, 25% to B in the first year, and then on a 2-year basis after that we reevaluate and move more towards an equal ground. So say after like 5 years, we may be 5 or 6 years, we're looking at almost 50-50. And then, so that way, whatever profits are made is going to get a huge amount of that.
Right. Yeah. I think that 75-25% range definitely falls into line with what I discussed with A. So in terms of just profits and profit allocations and losses, I think A is comfortable with the 75-25%. I do want to know as we draft this possible agreement, I would rather things sort of be open-ended in terms of how we assess the incremental potential increase of the allocation share. I do like that 2-year mark and would even be willing to assess it annually, but I don't want to necessarily attach a percentage to each year. So that if B is correct in his assessment of the technology industry and, is bringing in substantial amounts of income, there wouldn't be a cap for, this amount of increase in that year. And conversely, if he's wrong, right? Or if things just don't go as well as anticipated in that next year or two, we're not going to guarantee that there'll be a 10% increase for say, or 5%.
Right. Okay. I like that. I think that the way that should be done though is obviously in that situation where we're renegotiating profit loss sharing after 2 years, A and B are not neutral, unbiased parties in doing so. So what if we brought in, I know that it's relatively common to get a management committee in medium or large firms, which we would be a small firm, but if we got an outside group, business management firm to kind of do a performance review or something like that and make their recommendation instead of having A and B say, hey, I think you did a terrible job.
Sure.
Or B say, hey, I think I did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so it's more objective that
absolutely.
way.
Yeah, I think that is definitely fair. And I think that her and I discussed something similar, and she would definitely appreciate that neutral, objective assessment of both of their performances. However, she wants to sort of have the final say on those allocations, at least within the first 5 years of the partnership. So I think what we could do is maybe create a system in which A and B assess their own performances and each other's, and those assessments are considered in the potential increase of allocation, and then we hire this third party as well that's neutral, right? And then I think what we would do is the third party's sort of opinion would weigh in 50%, and then we would let A's opinion weigh in 30%, and then B's would be 20%. So I mean that's like a 10% sort of differential. I think that's pretty fair. And again, we trust B, honestly. So we're not we don't suspect that there will be very large discrepancies in how these values are assessed, but
so we're saying outside committee 50%,
yeah, so if
B 20, A 30.
So that would be outside, this would be B, and this would be A. And so the weight of the decision is going to fall on the outside committee. And then there's just that 10% margin that A has right now.
Right.
And I think obviously in a 50-50 partnership, that's going to be done away with. They would each have that 25% weight. So that's just going to make A feel comfortable, because even these neutral, objective third parties are not perfect.
Right.
A has a lot of experience in this field and has done really well with financial forecasting and projecting, and so she's confident that she can do this neutrally, but understands B's concerns and values his assessment as well as the third party.
So I like that, but how does that work? So say like A says, hey, it should be 75-25 again this year. B says it should be 60-40, and outside committee says it should be 70-30. They all three say something different. Then what number do you arrive at? Because with that formulation, the 50%, since there's no two parties saying the same thing, the outside committee with their 50% would be able to make that determination, or do you meet in the middle? Or
I think in terms of the numbers specifically, we would just sort of take the weighted average from these, and so we would meet in the middle.
Okay.
And so essentially in this case, we would end up going closer to the 70-30. So it would be that 75-25 split would be, the 0.30. This will be the 0.50, and this will be the 0.20.
Okay.
So yeah, essentially they would all sort of have say in what the numbers are. I mean, and the other alternative, as you suggested, is we could just sort of let A and B know what the third party's assessment is, and then they could choose to just stick with those numbers, right, or not. I mean, I think A would be open to either of those. Her main concern is just that her assessment is valued and is highly considered, not just the third parties and not just B's. So.
Okay, I like using that weighted average.
Okay, awesome.
I think that works.
Yeah, because I mean these guys have been in the game for a while, and again, I think A and B have a good relationship. They have trust, so I don't foresee there being large discrepancies from these numbers.
Right. And
even as you see here, I mean, we're gonna if this were the case, we would fall into a pretty healthy range. So.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like
and
that.
This is how we're going to assess profit shares and losses.
Right.
Okay.
So 75-25 first year, and then at the 2-year mark, we bring in the outside committee, and that's divided 50-30-20. Okay, so that sounds good. Next is capital contributions on my list. What is A expecting?
Yeah, so A has capital to start this, is in a pretty good place. So ideally, B would be able to provide, 10,000 capital to start things up.
Okay.
We are open to brainstorming and thinking about that. That's a sizable amount, and we know where B is. We have some idea of where B is financially just from past conversations.
Right.
So we're amenable to changing that range. And I'll say more important than the number to us is that we think partnership is a very serious decision, and we want to know that B's committed.
Okay.
And we think that this amount will help sort of demonstrate and reinforce that commitment. So
right.
that's a part of the reason why we asked for 10.
Okay, so I'll say you're not wrong about speculating that B is in not the best financial place personally right now. He's not in debt up to his eyeballs or anything,
sure.
But he just had twins, and he just purchased a new home.
Yeah.
So he's not really in a position to just throw down $10,000 right now.
Sure.
But there are two things that I think that could satisfy A's desire here. First is, I think that A would also agree that the technology and infrastructure of his firm or her firm right now is stuck in the early 2000s, and B is very technologically inclined. He thinks that he can come in and upgrade those systems and basically make a contribution in that manner, and he thinks that that's going to pay off in just how efficient they can be with their work systems and put out a better product. So that's something to consider. And also, he has this opportunity to, he's been approached to write an alternative dispute resolution guide in contractor and subcontractor disputes. So he thinks that if he's able to do that, that'll bring in about 5,000 to 10,000, just depending on how well it actually sells. I would say the only con on that is just he obviously has to have the time to write it.
Right.
And so I think if he were to just forward those funds from that guide into the partnership as his contribution, it wouldn't be, obviously, he wouldn't be able to contribute that immediately. It would be more so once he's joined the partnership and they're getting everything up and running, he would write that, and then any proceeds from that would go into the partnership. So it just wouldn't be an immediate, as soon as he walks in the door, here's $10,000 type thing.
Okay.
So, and I mean, I'm sure that he could scrounge up like $2,000 or $3,000 now.
Okay.
And then with the administrative and technological upgrades, and then the proceeds from the dispute resolution guide coming in later, that should be around 10,000 in total value, if not more.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So, A and I discussed a similar arrangement, and definitely see B's value with technology and also potentially doing some administrative work. So, like, how much capital could B provide in the next week?
In cash? I'll say about 2,000 to 3,000.
Okay, 2,000 to 3,000. So that's not as much as we were hoping for. But again, we know that he had twins and he's, just bought the house. So it's certainly understandable that he's not able to do as much at this point. So I think we could agree to, we'll say, you want to say maybe like 2.5, so do like 2,500.
Yeah, we can do that. And
So
I don't know, specifically how much money he has in the bank right now.
Okay, that's fair. I think as long as it's above that 2,000 mark,
okay,
my client will be content. So we can aim for the 2,500, and if it's at the 2,000, my client will be okay with that. So how did you want to calculate the contributions of the technology and administrative? We talked about, my client and I discussed, honestly looking at sort of the market rate right now for those skills, and then allowing B to sort of work up to whatever amount. So if he's heading towards the 10,000, because that's what the capital amount that we initially requested.
Right.
He would work. If he gives the initial 2,000, then $8,000 worth, or if it's the 2,500, 7,500 worth. Doing tech and administrative at the going rate. So I think we looked at admin, and that was about 15 an hour. So for the type of work we're asking, and then tech was about, I think it was around 40 or so. And we can come to an agreement with those numbers, but
okay.
That's sort of what we talked about. And so based on those numbers, I think that would leave I think that would just leave B to work, a few 40-hour weeks, and I think we came up with about 7 or 8 40-hour weeks, and that would cover the
Right.
remaining balance. And of course, he could that those hours could be spread. And the other alternative is once he writes the alternative dispute resolution book, you know, he could sort of pay the balance from that capital. So.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I don't think that this one is a huge sticking point for either party because with the $2,500 upfront and then whatever else he contributes in terms of administrative or technological work, I know that B is fine with that, and
Okay.
he wants to do that either way, just so that the firm is improved by having
Right.
better technology and is
Yeah.
more streamlined. So
Yeah, those from A's perspective, those would sort of be his continual roles, and so it even makes sense that he would sort of start that he would initiate that work for the partnership. So I do want to just come to an agreement about these numbers and make sure we're on the same page. So B is going to provide between $2,000 and $2,500 of capital, and with the remaining $8,000 or $7,500 balance, he's going to provide administrative support and technology support, for which he'll be paid the market rate, which admin is about 15, and we looked at the higher end numbers because we know his skill set, and then for tech, I think we found between 30 or 40. So I guess we could say 35 to meet in the middle. Are those numbers agreeable for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that works.
And so we'll create he can create a spreadsheet, and he would just sort of enter it in up until he reaches that $10,000
Right.
mark. And if the AGR goes well and he gets the 5 or 10 and wants to just supplement that, and then that's fine as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great.
So I think we should talk a little about guaranteed compensation.
Okay.
So I think there may be a little bit of a divide here.
I think there may be.
But like I know that we talked initially, B is willing to accept less than what he wanted to make the partnership agreement work. So he wants $85,000 a year. And then of course on top of that, like in any partnership, if you have a minimum guaranteed compensation, then any profit sharing on top of that, like for this first year, he would get the 25%
Right.
on top of that.
Right.
So yeah, that's what he wants.
Okay.
And I think that you've already mentioned 75,000 number.
Yeah, the 75 was actually though for the associate position. So A has not been very fond of that definite number.
Of the 85,000 or of a definite number as a partner?
The guaranteed sort of salary.
Okay. Let's see. Well, I think that depends. If there's no guaranteed salary, I think that B would be concerned that in this first year, as they're gearing up, if he's only getting 25% of profits, and say profits are only $150,000, he's making like, I don't know what the math is, but he's making like 30 or 40, 80, 20, like $45,000 a year with 2 kids and a new mortgage, and like he can't live off that. So
yeah,
I think that if A was willing to do a guaranteed salary as an associate, I don't see the sticking point of doing the same thing. And I think that B would accept the 75,000 minimum as a partner, and then I am horrible at math, so I don't really know
Mm-hmm.
the firm's profits, what we would bring in, what the 25% on top of that would be.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a decent chance that there wouldn't be a lot on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was, say he's making like 80,000 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our A has some clients already lined up. Her projected gross revenue is actually about $500,000. And so the anticipated cost for the setup within this first year is about 150,
Mm-hmm.
and so that would leave potentially 350 gross or actual profit.
Right.
And so 25% would be a pretty hefty number. And I think that's the reason why. And again, A's got skin in the game too. She's not taking a salary either. So I do understand B's. Concern though, and A and I talked about that.
What is 25% of
Of that 350.
350?
Let's see. It's right about 75K.
Okay.
25 of 400 would be 100,000. So it's right around there. What if 75 is the benchmark? What if we said if profits go below that amount, then we will pay B that in a bonus?
So, okay, so if he does not make over 75,000
from his 25% profit allocation, then we will supplement him with that in a bonus. So by Christmas, he would get that amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Because that's...
Because a part of partnership is, they're both dependent on, right, the revenue and getting clients. That's a part of the work. And
right.
So if we're going to do partnership, A really wants to sort of start out with that mentality that like we work to eat. And
right.
so, but again, this is the first year and we realize that B just had twins and bought a house and has those legitimate financial concerns.
So if B does not make over 75,000 with his 25% share, then okay, yeah, I like that.
Okay, great.
Almost feel like we should bring in an accountant in these negotiations just so we don't have to do the numbers.
Yeah, I actually enjoy the numbers piece. So.
I do not.
So it's not too bad, but so yeah, if we do 50, 1250, yeah, so 6250, yeah. So if our projected 350, 25 of that would just be a few thousand shy of the 75. So yeah, I think that'll work nicely.
And then that's not even taking into consideration that we think we'll get XYZ's litigation stuff
Exactly.
too. So this bonus hopefully won't have to be paid, because
right.
if it is paid, that means neither one of us did as well as we wanted. So
Exactly,
yeah.
because our calculations are not including XYZ's business. So
let's see. Okay, if we're good on that, then I think the next item is allocation of any personal liability.
yeah.
I don't really know how much of a position B has on this, because the general rule for a limited liability partnership, which is what we would be forming, is it's limited to the LLP itself. So if anything goes wrong, then you split the losses, or the funds are taken out of the partnership itself. You don't have to personally pay out of your own bank account.
Right.
And obviously each partner is an agent of the partnership and would have authority to bind the partnership, which that's just general partnership law. So
yeah, of course.
I don't know beyond that how much B really wants to mess with that.
Okay. A and I have talked about this somewhat extensively. And I mean, essentially, A expects that the startup cost will be somewhere around 150 to 200,000. And she is prepared to front like as a personal loan and get better. You know, the company would pay less interest doing it that way. She's willing to front, you know, at least half of that, which means that we would still need to get another 100,000 in monies as the LLC. And so her condition is that both her and B would be liable for that $100,000 loan.
So you're saying as the LLP, we approach a bank, get a loan,
and that they would have personal liability, and then the other request to B is that, and again they would both sign the business loan. The other request is that B would assume some personal liability under the existing lease. So right now, the lease is only under A.
Okay. I think for the lease, yeah, we would agree to putting B's name on the lease too. If we're going to be partners, then that's just seems to make common sense to me.
I think so. That's why we presented it that way.
And for the partnership loan, yeah, if we're both personally liable, then that would, I think, if my understanding of partnership law is correct, which it might not be, we would have to alter the partnership agreement or put that specifically into the partnership agreement, because the general rule is that the LLP itself is liable. So if we make that amendment, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, and A's rationale behind that is just because she's investing so much up front, she would lose everything if just the LLP were liable.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that sort of, again, allows all parties to show some commitment and investment, which is what A wants.
Okay.
So.
Yep, we can do that.
Great.
And so that leaves the last thing if, so rights to revenue from any of the partnership clients if the partnership breaks up or whatever. And then also like how you withdraw, if we're going to make this a term partnership, which I think we should.
I agree.
Then I think both A and B would like to see, I know that B would liability if you withdraw early, or if you withdraw without cause, just so B knows that if A is just the slightest bit dissatisfied, she's not just going to leave and pull the rug out from under B. And I think that A would also like that reassurance that B is not just going to disappear one day.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding you correctly, B wants to be able to terminate the partnership at will as well?
I would say does not want to be able to.
Oh, he doesn't.
That there would be some liability if you withdrew without a reason, or however we want to structure it. It could be a term, like you set a number of years, and then after that number of years, there's no more liability, but at that point we could renegotiate as well.
Yeah. I think again, since this is all new, we would want the first term to definitely be no more than 365 days. So over the course of this next year, A can commit to not withdrawing the partnership from B without cause. And I do think we need to explicitly say what those would be.
Right. Let's see. So yeah, within the 365 days, the first year, I mean, in my opinion, calls would be like, obviously the extreme things like misappropriation of the partnership's funds. That's would be bad. Any type of malpractice. Because if that were not included, then the partnership funds could be tapped into from one party's mess up.
Right.
Do you have any other ideas?
I think the default for Tennessee under Title 61 is some of the things you mentioned, like, you know, any fiduciary issues, duties of loyalty, anything like that. And I think that pretty broadly covers things. I do know that that A specifically, like, if dissolution were to happen, wants to have the right to the clients.
Okay, what I'll say about that is I'm not sure that we can even agree to that, because from a professional responsibility standpoint, that's on the clients. They're supposed to have freedom to choose whoever they want.
Sure. Yeah.
So we can't like have a client sign a contract and say no matter what happens, we're going to stick with you.
So let me clarify that. As it pertains to A and B's in-office communication, A wants the opportunity to first invite clients to work with her. And as you said, like, based on professional responsibility, they can't commit to that. They're free agents. But she wants to at least have the first point of contact. And then B would be free to do as he pleases.
Okay.
A would, I think in particular, because right now we're only talking about the first year, and these are primarily gonna be clients that A has brought in and that A already has pre-existing relationships with.
Yeah.
So to us, that just made sense. If, 5 years from now, when B is bringing in clients and has more billable hours, it would make sense that, those clients that he brings in, he also has sort of the first opportunity to invite those clients to come with him.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and if this is just a 365-day thing, it would obviously be reevaluated.
Definitely. So that's another reason why we felt like it's fair that A has the rights to the clients that she's already established relationships with.
Yeah, for sure.
This next year.
Right. Yeah, I think B can live with that, and all of that is just based on him really just wanting to enter into a partnership, even if we're not doing everything 50-50, at least for now. So,
Yeah.
of course, down the road, if it works out and everybody's happy, I think that we may see each other in 10 years and we'll be talking 50-50.
Well, and I've seen some companies do it where essentially if you bring that client in, you have the right to invite them to come with you first.
Right.
So he would, you know, in the foreseeable future, he would have rights to some of those clients. And then where both parties have sort of been engaged in that initial, you know, assertion of the client, then we would talk about who would have rights. And like you said, from the professional responsibility of the client, they're free agents. They get to choose. So we can't commit them to our services any more than XYZ could.
Right.
But we do want to be able to sort of send that letter out, make that phone call explaining why the partnership is dissolved, and that we would appreciate their business.
Okay. That is agreeable to me. So I think that covers it. Unless there's anything else that you want to talk about, I think that we've went through my list at least.
Yeah, I want to double check mine, just to be certain. I did want to be clear about A's expectations of B in terms of his hours. So again, we are anticipating for the first year that there will be about 900 hours of work, and so B would be free to pursue other opportunities, like you mentioned with ADR.
Right.
In addition to that 900 hours of substantial learning, if you will, we are also wanting B to contribute about 250 hours of technology support and administrative support. And again, our thoughts are these are things that he's gifted in, that he's expressed that he enjoys. And if he doesn't fulfill these roles, we would have to, you know, hire a third party to do that.
Okay, so are you talking about 250 hours on top of the capital contribution? Because we talked about
That's
those
correct.
things. Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, well, what if there were a scenario where he's billing a lot more than that 900 hours and doesn't have the time to do it? Like, what if XYZ enters into some huge antitrust litigation and
Sure.
he needs 1,800 hours just for them?
Well, in that case, we would have to hire a third party, and the projected.
But I also don't think A would be mad about that because they
No,
just gotta...
that's a good problem. That would affect the numbers a bit because that 350 projected, we'd have to hire someone. I'm assuming that would cost no more than maybe $75K or so. And so that would just could potentially decrease the gross, but if there's more business, right, that's gonna kind of
Right,
balance.
it's gonna offset for sure.
So
yeah, so if he's not billing a huge amount of hours, then I'm sure he would do that because he's committed to improving, like I said, technology and administrative aspects of the firm.
And I think A is gonna want to talk to B in more detail. I don't know all the specifics of her ideas for office management, but I think even if B didn't do the work, she wants him to think through the best systems, functions, and processes for the office to be more efficient, especially thinking long term as their client base grows. And so ideally within his first few months of working before the possibility of his billable hours increasing so substantially that he couldn't contribute in these ways, he would already have thought through a plan so that
Right.
if we brought a third party on, they could just implement that plan.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine with that. And he's probably already thinking about a plan, if I had to guess, just because he's ready to leave where he's at, and
Yeah.
he's already kind of committed himself to this idea, so I'm sure that he's already got something going on.
Yeah. Well, great. I think that was my sort of my last deal. And then I guess lastly I'll say I think it might be beneficial for you and I to run through Title 61 with both of our clients, and just make sure that the sort of the default partnership statutes and laws we are in agreement with, and
Right.
That there's nothing that we want to change or amend. So I'm thinking we can go ahead and get this written up, do that last step with our clients, and then maybe come back together if there is anything that needs to change.
Yeah, we can all get together, and then that next time, if everything's okay, should be
Sign
just
the
signing off.
paperwork, yeah. Well, awesome.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.